Oke. Misal tak contoh sekalian ya, Tafiana ini. Pokoknya business or social enterprise idea. Mungkin punya bisnis tentang lembaga kursus, misal kursus bahasa Inggris atau apa, atau mungkin bisa harus berkaitan dengan pendidikan teman-teman. Ini memang benar-benar bisnis itu tergantung passionnya teman-teman aja. Nggak harus. Kemudian kemarin aku di email sama Rich. Nah, sebentar. Aku di email sama Rich, dia ngasih tahu bahwa minggu ini adalah minggu terakhir dia kuliah sama timnya apa itu namanya mahasiswanya sana. Terus dia minta itu kita udah propose materi yang sekiranya bisa dipakai pada pertemuan tanggal 14. Ini for session on the 14th, have you got a para or two that you could write me for tomorrow so that I can profile the session for my student and try and get their buy-in. Nanti rencananya mahasiswanya dia diajak juga ngajar. Itu kalau nggak salah dia itu mau nunjuk mau nunjuk mahasiswa dari Surabaya, mahasiswanya dia dari Surabaya untuk gabung di kita. Tapi sampai sekarang ini aku nunggu siapa yang mau gabung antara dari Ukraine sama dari Surabaya yang mau dampingi dia ngajar di tanggal 14. Nanti insya Allah link Zoom-nya akan saya share. Ini kan masih bulan November ya. Mungkin nanti pas mau seminggu lah sebelum sebelum kita ketemu sudah dikirimkan sih. Email saya ke Rich terakhir, saya lihatnya dulu.
Itu kira-kira sekali meeting berapa jam, Pak Muhid?
Bisa request, dia bebas. Yang penting jamnya kemarin emang setelah jam ini sih bentar. Anything pakai balik. Sampai lupa ya. Pokoknya bebas Bu. Pokoknya setelah jam 3 sore dia bilang. Setelah jam 5 sore. Oke, sebentar ya.
Mungkin habis maghrib kalian gitu ya.
Bisa, nggak apa-apa. Nggak masalah. Jadi setelah maghrib nanti bisa lebih leluasa sampai ngisak pun nggak apa-apa kan.
Okay. One day workshop or gimana?
Ini for the first one Lebu, jadi mungkin 2-3 kali pertemuan loh nanti sama dia.
Oh, siap. Siap, Cah.
Tapi memang dia biasanya setelah Desember, karena kemarin kalau teman-teman masih ingat saya, dia itu mau memfinishkan sama studinya dulu, baru mau meranjak kita itu sebelum Natal kan, sama dia udah dikasih tanggal ini. 14. Ini 14, ya 14 or kita 14 aja, lebih cepat lebih baik toh.
Ya, oke.
Ya, terus kemudian
dibalas lagi. Berarti akan ada second, third.
Ya, ada beberapa meeting.
Aku influence the business, so I guess for me, off the top of my head, and I'm going to respond to what you're saying in chat as well, Ali. You'll be part of a trade organisation almost inevitably, so there will be best practice coming through that trade organisation in terms of these are the things that you need to be doing, and all of the trade organisations will have been very focused on the business changes that are required from pandemic and how to respond to that. So I'd say that be your first source, and as a business you should be regularly checking your performance, identifying your areas for weakness, and your trade body is going to be your first port of call. I think in terms of that identification of weaknesses, there's something about what your dashboard is of performance indicators. For Cohesia, for me, it was probably as easy as, are the customers happy? Have stuff been delivered on time to the customers? And then looking at the profits. and loss. I think the driver in terms of the criteria, I didn't write the original assignment, but the driver in the criteria and generally through the module is to make you think about how you draw on trusted opinions. So again, I think some of Alan's material is useful in that. And even if you're not choosing an Alan business, remember that in terms of getting grades and marks for your research and your resources, you can draw on what he said. So you might end up saying for Eagle Car Rental, the advice sources they used are these, this chimes or reminds me of what Alan Roberts was saying. You shove a citation in there for this session, or he says something different, and then you amplify that point. The mentoring or the coaching points, in my mind, and again, I'm going to use the caveat that I didn't write the assignment, although I am the one marking it. I would say that it's about your personal development or your development as a senior team. So sometimes as a chief executive, you'll have a mentor to encourage you to address identified weaknesses. Mentors tend to be blunter than coaches. So a mentor is almost like having a personal critical friend, whereas coaching is a lot more generic. So both of those should be developing you as an individual, not necessarily around technical skills, but perhaps as technical skills, but they're developing your capacity to act within that business. So I think for car lease, you're thinking about how far the weaknesses is technical function that you need technical advice for, and how far it's capability of the staff. So Ali, going to your chat, I think the point about professional cleaning and fixing cars, scratch marks, all that sort of stuff, I think that becomes relevant if it's an area of weakness for the business, current or potential area for weakness. So in other words, would I always want to go to enterprise car hire because I know that the car looks like X, even though the price might be cheaper at Eagle, for example, because I know obviously this isn't the case in reality, but because I know that the car maybe looks a bit scruffier and actually I want a car that looks good for business, or do I just want a cheap car to get me down to Cornwall? I think that the professional cleaning thing is, again, whether that's been identified as a generic area for weakness, and then picking up, I'm going to call it Tanos's point, have some business features become more important in pandemic? So have we collectively become more focused on things like cleanliness and hygiene, even if it doesn't have a material effect on us as it just got into our psyche? You can use those features in terms of criteria for, and sorry, I'm just going to scroll back down to your chat, but it needs to be focused again on those areas for improvement. And what I'm looking for is something whereby you can identify the way in which advice can make the business better, bluntly. So does that answer it? I keep losing the chat on Zoom. I'm going to scroll back down again. I think I'm talking about coaching as something probably more high level. So coaching can be quite expensive, and I think it's about personal development, and mentoring is predominantly around personal development, but might have a bit of technical knowledge there, particularly in the way in which we use it offhand in terms of having a mentor within the business. So the action plan is how you're going to turn around that area for improvement stroke weakness. And for action planning, my default is always to go to something that's SMART. People use the acronym in slightly different ways, but in essence, you want to make sure that whatever the commitment is to address something, that it gets done, and that you know that it gets done. If we go back to Alan and the website, by way of example, I want to know something specific, which is the S. And in terms of specific, is it a website just to advertise, or is it a website to trade? One or the other. Fargo businesses bought a website which showed their product, but it hadn't got a sales bit to it, which was problematic. So you want something specific, you want something measurable. So the question for Alan we didn't get to ask was exactly when is that website going to be up, and how's he going to start signposting that? Actionable is what I tend to use for the A, so it's clear who's doing that. Where are we up to? SMAR in terms of, sometimes people use realistic, sometimes people use resourced for the R. Bluntly is the money and the staff time to do that. And T, I tend to use timetabled, which sometimes crosses with the M as in measurable, but actually I could have phrased the SMART break out a bit more clearly. The T is actually making sure that it gets done on time. Gantt chart's fine. Gantt chart's fine. The only thing I'd say about Gantt chart is it tends to measure progress against time and the task against time. So you would need to convince me that it's multifaceted, as in SMART. What do I mean by that? That the Gantt chart is specific enough in terms of what's required. So the words that you put on a Gantt chart actually have the same meaning to everyone. And I think the Gantt chart also needs to have a resource sat behind it to enable someone to move from there to there in a particular time frame. I think that a Gantt chart for me is part of the solution, but it still needs to be clear to everyone that they mean the same thing in terms of that Gantt chart and that it's resourced. That was very long-winded, wasn't it? But I'm still happy to look at, still committed to getting you previous assignments, with the caveat that I want to hear your ideas first. I don't want to corrupt your ideas with previous years, and equally with the caveat that the previous year's assignments aren't ones that I've marked. So I'm a little bit careful about that in terms of, we have a moderation process in terms of marking as well. But I won't have marked the ones from previous years, I guess is what I'm bluntly saying. Ali, does that cover it? Other people, do you want to